Now today I have two different vehicles with me. For the SUV, I have brought along a 2022 Ford Explorer ST, one of the most popular selling SUVs in the country. And on my right side, I have a Honda Odyssey, which is the most popular selling minivan in the country today. And I'm going to be comparing these vehicles and telling you the pros and cons of getting either one, not model specific, but as the type of vehicle they are. When you look at an SUV, you're typically going to see a boxier and bulkier design, but that's not the main difference between these cars. The main distinguisher between whether you're looking at a minivan or an SUV is of course going to be the doors and the door handle placement. Now, coming over to the side, I'm basically going to show you what that means, and all of you are going to be aware of this, but on the SUVs, you will see the door handles placed towards the rear of the door, and that makes sense because when you open them, they open forward. Versus on a minivan over here on the Honda Odyssey and every other minivan on the planet, you're going to see that on the front doors, the door handles placed towards the rear, and on the rear doors, the door handles placed towards the front. And that's because on all minivans, of course, the door opens by sliding instead of opening. Now, there's a reason they call them a minivan, because if you look at a utility van or any type of van, most of them are going to be like this with a sliding door. And of course, that's for practicality, for a bigger entrance, for whatever you're putting in the vehicle. And it does add more safety, especially if you have small kids. The Honda Odyssey actually has sensors that stops the door from closing if there is something in the way of it. That way you won't have any smashed fingers from little children climbing in and out of the vehicle without supervision. Now, moving on to the interior of the minivan, more often than not, you're going to see more connectivity inside of a minivan rather than an SUV. And that's for good reason. You're hauling a bunch of people, whether it be adults or children. They're going to need to be able to charge their phones and entertain themselves for the long drive ahead. And the Honda Odyssey and every other minivan on the market is going to have these basic features. Back here, you have things like an HDMI port and two USB-A Type A ports for the entertainment system and for charging your phone. And as you can see, the entertainment system is actually in the ceiling right here, where kids can watch their movies, play their video games, whatever they want to do, they can use that screen for. And most commonly, you're not going to find this in an SUV. You'll find way more customization inside the interior of a minivan rather than an SUV. In fact, on the Honda Odyssey, you can remove this entire second row and literally put the seats outside of the vehicle. I don't know why you'd want to do that. That seems like a better feature for something like the third row. But yes, if you didn't want your second row inside the Honda Odyssey, you could take these out, which is just, when I found out that you could do that by just unhooking the seats, I was very surprised. Another thing on the inside of minivans is you're going to find a lot more durable materials. Yes, they come off as cheaper. You're going to find a lot more harder plastics in here, but that is for good reason. Yes, we all like our comfortable leather surfaces and soft touch pieces, but you can't always get that, especially when you have smaller children that are going to make a mess of everything and get their grubby little hands on every surface they touch. That's why the interior of the Honda Odyssey, other than the seats, is mostly made of plastic because it's easier to clean rather than having everything be leather or cloth, and in the end you having to use a scrub brush for 20 minutes to get one stain of their Kool-Aid out. Now, it's not only the back seats of a minivan that have the coolest features in them for your family. In the Honda Odyssey specifically, there's actually a microphone system in this car that allows you to talk to rear seat passengers. That way, when they're yelling and screaming or watching TV on the screen back there, they can actually hear you and you don't have to strain your voice by trying to talk to the rear seat passengers. On top of that, you also have a lot more kid-friendly controls up here. There's buttons over here to close the side doors. There's more connectivity up here and entertainment-focused technology, including a Blu-ray player up here. And on top of that, there's just more storage space, especially in the center console right here, where there's a bunch of connectivity and space, and down here below the center control stack, where you can store things like food for a long road trip. Another cool feature in the Honda Odyssey for making sure your children or your passengers in the rear are okay is they have a system called Cabin Watch, which is a camera that sits in the rear seat that you can view from the center entertainment system up front, even when you're driving. So it's always important to have these little kid-friendly and family-friendly features. That way you can make sure everything in the rear seat of your vehicle is going the way it's supposed to. Now, I am going to talk a little bit about the powertrains of these vehicles. In this instance, they're both powered by a 3.5-liter V6, except this one is turbocharged and makes 400 horsepower, and this one makes nowhere near that because this one is naturally aspirated. But it is important to mention that this holds true for many cases between an SUV and a minivan. the SUV will typically make more power. Now, when it comes to gas mileage of these two vehicles, of course you're going to think that the minivan is going to be more fuel efficient. And in this case, you're right. Through the entertainment center, you can see this one is making about 21 miles per gallon. And when you're trying to get the best of your money and haul a bunch of people around, that's not too bad. As for the Ford Explorer with this big engine, this is getting about 16 miles per gallon. Now, if you get the normal 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, you're going to be getting a little more than that because it's a little more fuel efficient. And this can be fuel efficient, but of course, with all the power it makes, you are getting worse gas mileage on this vehicle. And that might be true for a lot of SUVs out there. So it's always important to consider when you're thinking about getting one of these two vehicles, the minivan might be getting more gas mileage and be saving you more money. Now, I'm not here to hate on every single SUV out there. In fact, there are benefits to getting this, and that's why they sell so well. SUVs, because they make so much more power, and because a lot of times you'll find them in a 4-wheel or all-wheel drive configuration, these typically are better in muddier situations and off-road situations than a minivan will be, and you can typically take these through worse climates because they'll handle themselves better. So yes, though the SUV makes worse gas mileage and is more expensive to run, this can get you in and out of a lot more situations than this one can. Now, the SUV market is popular among tons of groups, including families and just normal people who are alone driving their cars. But that is for good reason. The interior of an SUV is going to typically be a lot higher quality feeling with more soft touch materials and it feeling more luxurious and comfortable than a minivan will. Now, I did say that the Honda Odyssey had tons of practicality, and so does the SUV. Though this has less storage, it has plenty of it, and it has nice creature comforts as well. Just like that Honda Odyssey doesn't have cooled seats, this one does. And in the back of the vehicle, I would also say that your passengers in the rear are going to be more comfortable in this car because the seats are larger, and this has a captain's chair configuration, so even if you are hauling around small children, they can still fit in the back seats without you having to fold down a chair in the middle to get them back there. So yes, though the SUV is less practical, it still shows that it can handle large families and large groups of people, which is why I think the SUV has taken precedence over the minivan, because it can do what a minivan can do, maybe not as well, but it also provides a lot more of a luxurious feeling than the minivan does. I hope that does provide a little more clarity on what vehicle you should be getting based on your use case. If you're having older children, if you're having a group of people, or you're just driving the car by yourself, the SUV probably will be a better bet for you. But if you have younger children or you're hauling around more people at once, the minivan's probably going to suit your needs better. And we're not talking about performance here, but for practicality's sake, of course the minivan's going to be a better deal compared to the SUV. If you guys like this video, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more from us, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.